Welcome to Nouns, faith lessons through people, places, and things. Growing up in high school and junior high, English was not one of my fortes. It wasn't the thing I enjoyed the most in school. But I remember that somebody, somewhere along the way, taught me that nouns were people, places, and things. So when we were sitting in class and we'd be given a paragraph that we would have to dissect, I really got tripped up on those prepositional phrases and verb tenses. But the nouns I could always get because I could circle the person, the place, or the thing, and I knew those were nouns. I do a lot of my thinking as I'm jogging. And today I'm in Sharon Woods, one of the metro parks here in Central Ohio. And recently I was jogging around this lake and through the trails here in this beautiful park. I thought to myself, you know what? God speaks to us through nouns, through people and places and things. So over the coming weeks, I thought we could spend some time just reminding ourselves of faith lessons that God births all around us on a daily basis. Everybody knows somebody. Nobody knows everybody. But we live our lives in the midst of community full of people. We count people, especially if you're a preacher. You always want to have somebody count how many people came to church. We'll categorize people. Sometimes we might even judge people. People are such a part of the fabric of who we are. And I believe many times God teaches us lessons of faith through people. Take a moment as we gather around these tables and have a short conversation with each other and see if you can name a couple people in your life that you have learned faith lessons through. You don't really have to get into what the lesson is that you learned, but take a couple moments. We'll put a counter up on the screen and see if you can name people that you learned faith lessons from. When I look over my list of people that I've learned faith lessons through, I got to put the person most dear to me at the very top, who taught me so many faith lessons, and that would be my mom. One of the lessons I learned from my mom was the difference between judgment and compassion. My mom was the elected clerk treasurer of our small village, population 832. People ask me, Jim, how do you remember the population of your hometown? I said, I know it was 832 because of the number of water bills that my mom had to type, because that was part of the job as the clerk treasurer. And man, it was a big day when Mom graduated to an electric typewriter versus that manual thing where you'd push that bar back and type and push the bar back. And I remember so much the hours she spent typing those water bills as the clerk treasurer. Now, the mayor in town was J.J. Callahan. And J.J. Callahan was older than my mom. He ran the drugstore in town. And he was just a classic politician. He knew how to smile. He knew how to interact. He ran that drugstore and made everybody feel loved and special. And he was a great mayor. He knew how to be the mayor in a small town of 832 people. But what I saw as a little boy was the clerk treasurer, who was a supporting character for Mayor J.J. Callahan. I knew that the mayor got to shine as the mayor because of the preparation that the clerk treasurer, my mom, had done throughout the week. When those council meetings came, the mayor would sit down there with that ordered agenda, and he would just rattle it off, point by point by point, because of the homework that my mom done. And many times my mom would run the interference to always make the mayor shine. As the mayor got older and we realized he wasn't going to be the mayor for forever, I remember asking my mom, Mom, why don't you become the mayor? You could run for mayor. Everybody loves you. You would do a great job. My mom was part of groundbreakings and planting trees in the community and a whole lot of other ceremonial stuff. And she had the persona and the charisma and the knowledge and the experience to be the mayor. I got to be honest, I also had a little self-serving interest, because it's one thing to be the son of the clerk treasurer, but I'm telling you now, to be the son of the mayor, that has a good ring to it. Come on, Mom, you can be the mayor. But she never did run for mayor. She told me later in life that the reason she never ran for mayor was because of mayor's court. I said, what? Mayor's court. Mayor's court in the town, the mayor presided over, and the mayor would make the decision who was right, who was wrong. The mayor would render the judgment on the matter at hand. And she said she never wanted to be in charge of mayor's court because she never wanted to render judgment. Because Mom, throughout her life, was much more about showing compassion. I remember as a little kid watching my mom go out to the curb, and she would be waiting for the garbage man to come down the hill and stop in front of our house. And she would have a plate of homemade cookies. She'd have a real ice-cold can of pop to give to the garbage man, along with those cookies. I don't know all the times that my mom would reach out to somebody else in need in town, not casting judgment on their situation, but showing compassion. I don't know how many times that she very discreetly maybe slipped a $20 bill to somebody in need just to help them out. There are countless stories of her showing compassion versus judgment throughout her life. Let's take a moment around the tables now and have a discussion about the difference between judgment and compassion. I know the world takes both. We can't live in a world without making a decision between right and wrong, good and bad. But there's a balance between being judgmental and compassionate. So we'll put the timer up on the screen. Let's have a short discussion here on how do you weigh the difference between judgment and compassion. at the very heart of the conversation of judgment and compassion. What was more in the heart of Christ? I go back to with the Gospel of John, 3rd chapter, verse 17, where it says that God sent Jesus into the world not to condemn the world or not to judge the world, but the world might be saved through him. Christ was not sent so much to be a judge, but to be the Savior. And my understanding of the Savior is a person who showed much compassion, much compassion. I picture Jesus more as a person standing at the curb, handing out the cookies and the pop to the garbage man, more so than sitting in mayor's court deciding who's right or wrong. 2 more verses before we wrap it up today. There's a verse in Galatians chapter 6, verse 1, where it reminds those who know Christ that if there is somebody that has fallen short, if there is somebody that has been judged to be less than who they ought to be, what's the role of the Christian? The role of the Christian is to restore that person with gentleness. One more verse before we go. This last verse comes from the book of James. It's chapter 2, I believe it's verse 13. It says, mercy triumphs over judgment. So when we wrestle with judgment versus compassion and mercy, I put a lot of weight on that little verse in the book of James. If there's a take-home verse for me, it's that one right there, James 2:13. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Spend some moments now at the table to kind of review these verses and what does it mean to make that balance between judgment and compassion. Thanks for joining me today on a lesson on people. Lifted up my mom. She's taught me much about mercy and judgment. So when we're out and about, I would just encourage you to just be mindful of mercy and how mercy will always triumph over judgment.